All right, AP Human Geography classes. So far, we talked about why do people migrate. Then we talked about where migrants are distributed around the world in the United States. And now we're going to talk about why do migrants face obstacles. All right, and there's different types of obstacles we'll talk about. Let's get to it. All right, so first off, let's talk about traditional migration. What were some of the obstacles that people encountered, before the 21st century? Well, this is still even true today, but regardless, let's focus on these. It was expensive to travel, right? Especially coming from somewhere where the economy was new good and somebody didn't have a lot of money. It was very hard for them to get from one point to another point. Obviously, beforehand, the journey was very long and dangerous. Most of the time, if you went overseas, obviously you took a boat. Hopefully you made it there. And then last but not least, another obstacle would have been economical and environmental. All right. And again, economical, going back to it's expensive to travel and people maybe couldn't afford to even get on a boat. And secondly, environmentally speaking, where they had to cross over a desert or had to cross some sort of physical obstacle to get from one point to another. So what are some obstacles today? Well, they've changed a little bit. Today, there's more cultural obstacles than there are physical obstacles. It's harder to gain permission to get into a country than it was, let's say, 60 years ago. And also, throughout time, there's been always hostile attitudes towards immigrants coming in from one country to another. It's not just in the United States, it's in other countries as well. So, what are some immigration policies that host countries or countries that inherit a lot of immigrants? What do they use to control migration? Well, there's two systems. One is an immigration quota, and the second one is a temporary working visa. And as you can see here on the right, that's one example. Let's talk about them. Let's first start with the United States, and let's talk about the quota laws and how they've changed over time. So look, what is a quota law? What's the maximum limit set on the number of people emigrating from a given country? All right, and that's in a specific one-year period. So the first time the United States implemented a quota was in 1921, and basically what they said was this, that 2% of the population of immigrants in a given country could come to the United States. All right, so if there are 7 million Germans, 2% of that amount could come year after year after 1921. Then we implemented the Immigration Act of 1965. We put quotas on hemispheres, all right, specifically X amount of people coming from the Western Hemisphere versus X amount of people coming from the Eastern Hemisphere. And then in 1978, which we still use today, we put a global quota down, where about 290,000 people are allowed to the country per year. All right, and there's no more than 20,000 from one nation. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. Let's get to them. So Congress basically set preferences on this global quota. So the 290,000 that are allowed in, about 75% of these immigrants are allowed because they're reunifying with their families, all right? Now, usually that process takes a total of 5 years, but nonetheless, that's a large percentage. The other 25% are immigrants that are skilled workers that perhaps, these immigrants come into the country, work for a little bit, and then might leave. And the rest is up to lottery. Literally by chance, you're allowed in. And again, that's about a 1%. Now, there are exceptions to the rules. We will allow, let's say, more than 290,000 people for the following reasons. If they're refugees from a country, or if their spouses, children, or parents are U.S. citizens and they're coming into the country, they are allowed to bypass that global quota rule, all right? And here's some case study examples. Cuba, when a lot of Cubans fled from Cuba under Fidel Castro into the United States, we accepted thousands. When the earthquake hit Haiti very hard, we allowed them to come in. And even during Vietnam, allowed many Vietnamese that are pro-democratic, pro-capitalist, pro-America to come into the country after the fall of Saigon in 1975. All right, and then there's the other spectrum here. Besides quotas, a lot of countries issue temporary working visas, and these are usually more popular in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. All right, so basically what they do is they use something called guest workers, and these are immigrants, usually from poor countries. And what they do is they come in and they take low status, low skill jobs that many locals just won't accept. But you know what though? That pay is still higher than what they might have got paid back home. The great part about this guest worker program is that they are still protected under law by minimum wage and other working laws. So even though they might take a low status, low paying job, it still is more in their new country than it would be in the country they came from. Now, again, today we talked about cultural obstacles, all right, and some of the things that immigrants face. Well, it's still true today, and it's not just in the United States, it's everywhere. There is this debate, especially an economic debate, where immigrants are coming to the country to find work, and the people of that country are basically stating that immigrants are taking too many of, let's say, for example, the United States workers' jobs, or let's say, Romanian jobs, or let's say French jobs, or yada, 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 okay? Whatever that immigrant group coming into that country, there seems to be throughout history discrimination for that group, okay? We'll talk more about this in class through debate. I'll see you then.